My older sister's son, my nephew Andre, was always very close to me and had moved to our city to attend university. He was young, full of energy, and incredibly charming. We began seeing each other more frequently and he always showed me affection and attention, something I hadn't felt from Lucas and me. Lucas and I had been married for many years, but as time went on, routine took over and the spark began to fade. After a while, Lucas and I had more intimate and personal conversations. He talked about his experiences at university, relationships, and even more private moments. He also mentioned places and situations that were entirely different from my reality. During one of these conversations, he mentioned something that shocked me. As a married woman, I had never considered it, but something inside of me was stirred, and I started to imagine what it would be. Lucas and I hardly discussed our needs and wants. He seemed content with the routine while I felt more and more suffocated. Andre's presence brought a new energy into my life, making me feel alive again. One night after yet another quiet dinner with Lucas, I received a message from Andre inviting me to go to a swinger club that weekend. My heart raced, knowing that I was about to cross a dangerous line, but even though I knew all the reasons not to go, the urge to try something new won out. I needed to feel like I was still wanted and that I could be the self-assured, seductive woman I used to be. Andre was willing to give that experience, so I accepted it with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. Little did I know at the time that that night would forever alter my life. The day came sooner than I had anticipated, and Lucas was more aloof than ever, buried in his computer while I tried to hide my nerves. My heart skipped a beat when I finally got Andre's message confirming the time and location. I read it over and over again, feeling like each word brought me closer to the inevitable. He told me he would be waiting and asked me to wear something sexy and confident, promising a fun night like no other. His words echoed in my mind, amplifying both the excitement and the fear. I started getting ready, selecting a tight red dress that was bolder than. Before leaving the house, I told Lucas that I was meeting a friend for coffee. He hardly took his eyes off the computer and just mumbled in response, which hurt me more than I expected but also strengthened my resolve that I needed to do this, that I needed to feel alive again. I put on my usual clothes, carefully applied my makeup, and checked myself in the mirror at every step to try to recognize the woman I saw. I wondered if I could really betray Lucas, but curiosity won out. Meet Andre, who was already there and grinning at me as though he understood exactly how I was feeling. He was very attractive, with a black shirt that accentuated his muscles, and as I got closer, he gave me a warm hug that felt more intimate than it should have been. "You look beautiful," he whispered in my ear, sending a chill down my spine. I knew there was no turning back at that point, so we got into his car and drove to Kiki, even though the tension between us was almost tangible. The walk to the location was brief. However, it seemed to go on forever, and when we finally got there, Andre held my hand and offered me some consolation. The building's understated exterior gave no clue as to what was going on inside, so I took a deep breath to try to relax. "We'll do this together. It's going to be an unforgettable night," he said confidently. I knew I was going to cross a line from which there was no way back, but at that moment, the only thing that mattered was the promise of feeling something new. We entered. Irrevocable moment in my life. The door opened and we were welcomed by an atmosphere I had never experienced before. The gentle lighting, sensual music, and almost tangible energy in the air made me feel both scared and excited. Andre was completely composed, which gave me a little more confidence. He held my hand tightly and guided me through the room as I took in every detail before continuing. I had a glass of red wine to calm my nerves. The interactions around us were private but respectful. We talked about unimportant things in an attempt to distract ourselves from the tension between us, but eventually Andre suggested that we explore the area. We went through hallways that led to themed rooms, each uniquely decorated and providing unique sensory experiences. I wondered if he felt the same mixture of nervousness and excitement as I did. Gradually, I felt my shoulders relax and the tension start to ease. Grew fueled by the sensual atmosphere and the pleasure on the faces of those around us. The lights softened, and there were cozy sofas scattered throughout the room. We sat on one of them, close enough to feel each other's warmth, and there was a gentle music playing in the background. He whispered, "Are you okay?" and his eyes met mine. I nodded, despite the fact that my heart was thumping like a drum. He leaned closer, his lips lightly brushing my ear, sending shivers down my spine. "If at any time you want to stop," he said in a gentle tone. The world around us seemed to vanish, and nothing else mattered except for that moment of feeling desired again, a sensation I hadn't felt in a long time. Andre's hands moved across my skin with a blend of urgency and tenderness, exploring and discovering. His words were a source of relief, making me feel safer, and then he kissed me. At first, it was a gentle kiss, but it soon intensified with desire that had been building for so long. The knowledge that I was going to cross a line from which there was no return didn't bother me. On the contrary, it made me feel better. I needed this, I needed to feel alive again, and from that moment we realized there was no turning back. What had begun as simple curiosity had turned into an urgent need, a search for something that had long since been lost, and with Andre by my side, I was prepared to find out where that night would take me. As we got up from the sofa, he took my hand and led me steadily down a hallway that was illuminated by soft, colorful lights. Every step I took increased my level of excitement and anxiety, and the atmosphere was irresistible, a mix of mystery and seduction, with soft laughter and murmurs resonating through the halls. We reached a larger door, which Andre carefully pushed open to reveal the main room, which was roomy and lavishly decorated and divided into smaller groups to create more private spaces for interactions and conversations. Andre led me back to the bar where I ordered another glass of wine to calm my nerves while we waited for our drinks. A few of the regulars approached us. They were very kind and welcoming, which helped me relax. The conversations were light and casual, but there was always a layer of anticipation behind the dancing floor, which had lights that changed colors in time with the music everywhere. Couples and groups laughed, talked, and exchanged suggestive glances. After a few songs, Andre dragged me onto the dance floor. The music was slow and sensual, perfectly matched the mood around us. Our bodies moved in unison, and the intimacy between us made my heart race even faster as we danced. I watched the other couples around us, some totally engrossed in each other, while others smiled and looked at those walking by. The freedom and lack of judgment were evident, and for the first time in a long time, I felt completely free. We sat on a sofa and he slowly started to touch me more deeply, his hands moving over my skin with a mixture of tenderness and desire. As our touches became more intense, I became aware that some people were observing us, which at first made me feel vulnerable but soon changed to something fresh and thrilling. The thought of being watched in a place where anything was acceptable only made me more excited. Andre leaned in and whispered in my ear. When they asked if I was comfortable, I nodded, making it obvious that I wanted to continue. Our kisses soon became deeper, more passionate, and I gave myself up to the moment, forgetting everything else. There was only Andre, and the pleasure that this provocative place was offering, and the permissive and enveloping atmosphere of that house became the ideal setting to rediscover a part of myself that had been forgotten for so long. That's when I realized how much this experience was changing my life. At that moment, nothing else mattered except for pleasure and the feeling of being myself. The atmosphere was charged with tension and expectation, and Andre and I felt alone in our own world as we sat on that sofa. His gentle caresses soon turned into deep, fiery kisses, and every touch from him sent waves of excitement through my body. Life, the combination of desire, freedom, and the strong connection I felt with Andre created an experience I would never forget. The intensity of the moment made everything around us dissolve, leaving just the two of us fully surrendered to desire. Andre's proximity was intoxicating, and his lips traced my neck while his hands explored my body with a mix of urgency and tenderness. I responded to every touch, feeling a connection that had long since vanished from my life. My heart raced faster with every second that passed, making me lose track of time and space. There was a sense of freedom and acceptance in the atmosphere during intimate moments, as if everyone there was looking for the same thing, an escape from the constraints of daily life. The fact that there were other couples so close and equally engaged didn't bother me, on the contrary. Rather, it heightened the excitement of the moment. Andre, with his husky, desire-filled voice, whispered in my ear what I was also feeling, smiled, and kept kissing me. He guided me to a more private room where the soft lighting created an even more intimate atmosphere. The room was beautifully decorated with a large mirror on the wall and an opulent bed in the center, creating the ideal setting for us to fully surrender to one another. Slowly, we started to undress, each piece of clothing being removed with care and reverence. The sensation of his warm skin against mine increased my excitement even further. When we were finally naked, he laid me on. The sensation of being wanted and being the center of someone's attention was so powerful that night that I realized that there was still a part of me that could feel intensely of wanting and being wanted. His eyes were fixed on mine, conveying a mixture of affection and desire. Our bodies move in unison, driven by the need to feel pleasure. Every movement, touch, and whisper were declarations of everything we had kept inside. The experience in that house made me realize how much I longed for something more in my life. I realized that from that moment on, nothing would be the same, but as we rested together, the only thing that mattered was the feeling of being alive again, of having lived something new and exciting, even knowing I would eventually calm down and lie side by side, breathless and satisfied. We had explored every inch of our bodies and given in to the pleasure it brought. I couldn't help but feel that every moment of that night had been worthwhile when I woke up the following morning to the warmth of his body beside mine. For a brief moment, I let myself relish the moment, the sense of having witnessed something extraordinary, but as reality set in, I felt guilty and confused. What we had done wasn't fair, and I felt awful. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, his voice full of concern, and I simply nodded, unable to understand. Speak a word. But the truth was far more complex. We woke up in silence and started getting dressed, each of us lost in our own thoughts. When I eventually left the swing house and made it home, the weight of what had happened started to weigh heavily on me. I found Lucas in the kitchen, still working.